Now, are we facing a future where more and more jobs are taken over by robots, whilst shares in Capita, the professional services company, fell to a 10-year low after it issued a profit warning, and it also announced plans to restructure the business. Now, it's been reported that as many as 2,000 jobs could be cut, with some potentially being carried out by automated robots. Well, in a moment, I'll be speaking to Professor Martin Smith, who's an expert in robotics at the University of Middlesex and the former principal scientist at the Government Science and Technology Laboratory. But first, let's take a look at some of the details of what is happening. So, some of Capita's jobs are going to be moved to India, but the group also plans to invest in automation. So, in other words, machines doing jobs that would previously have been done by humans. It's the second time that robots in the workplace have made headlines this week, because on Monday, the Bank of England Governor Mark Carney suggested that 50 million workers in total could be replaced by machines. Here's what he had to say.
Every technological revolution mercilessly destroys jobs and livelihoods, and therefore identities, well before new ones emerge. This was true of the eclipse of agriculture and cottage industry by the Industrial Revolution, by the displacement of manufacturing, by the service economy, and now the hollowing out of many of those middle-class services jobs through machine learning and global sourcing. Up to 15 million of the current jobs in Britain could be automated over time.
Mark Carney speaking there, and 15 million jobs represents almost half of the UK workforce. So that would amount to a complete transformation of our jobs market. And a recent report from Oxford University and Deloitte suggests that 861,000 jobs in the public sector could be automated by 2030. The roles that are most at risk of automation are those described as largely repetitive and predictable, so things such as desk-based admin jobs or hospital porters. In total, there's around 1.3 million people employed in that kind of work in the public sector. Now, jobs that involve human interaction, such as teachers and also police officers, are harder to be done by robots. But at the same time, machines could perform some admin elements of those roles, and that could affect 2.6 million current public sector jobs. Now, robots are less useful when it comes to jobs involving problem solving and judgment, but at the same time, chief executives and finance directors could still see automation change their workplace, for example, if they start using data analysis to help making decisions. So, is this worrying or encouraging? Well, Deloitte claim that robots could actually be good news for workers, because 800,000 jobs are at high risk. 800,000 jobs at high risk of automation have been lost since 2001, but at the same time, 3.5 million jobs in the lower risk category have been created in the same period. So, in other words, they cancel each other out. Those higher skilled jobs are also better paid, on average by £10,000 more than the high-risk jobs that they have replaced. Now, that has added £140 billion to the UK economy. So, I'm joined now by Professor Martin Smith, who's an expert in robotics at the University of Middlesex and also the former principal scientist at the Government Science and Technology Laboratory. Now, it's all very well saying that the economy is benefiting from robots, but it's not much comfort if your job's at risk, is it?
Not at all. But if you can retrain, that is an option. It's difficult for people if they've been doing one job for years and years and now have to retrain to do something very, very different. But it's really down to the government to make sure people are being taught useful topics for the future: electronics, computer science, mechanical engineering, software engineering, coding, those sort of things. And perhaps a bit less emphasis on teaching, I don't know, Greek, Latin, religion, or something like that.
Yeah, I hope there's not any Greek or Latin teachers watching as you're saying that. Can you explain to me, because I'm a bit confused on how robots could create more jobs? Because it seems to me that if things are more efficient, then surely you need to employ less people doing it.
Well, what automation and robots and artificial intelligence and computers do for us is to make the world more rich, more productive, able to generate wealth. Once you have that wealth, that solves an awful lot of problems. So if you've got your robot car or something, that enables people who can't drive to move around and so forth. So there are, although you lose a lot of jobs, and it's easy to see which ones you lose, it's very difficult to see which new ones are going to be created. You have to be able to really look far into the future for that.
And what kind of jobs do you think that robots will end up doing in the future?
Well, certainly the dangerous, drudgery, the sort of things people shouldn't really be doing, really boring, repetitive stuff. And that can be done by robots, but robots can't do any of the difficult stuff. For example, robot hands are very poor by comparison with human hands. Robot bipedal walkers are very poor by comparison with humans. There are many things that robots can't do, and robots are very, very expensive. Anything from £100,000 to £1 million. So I don't see them replacing people very much when people are £10 an hour or thereabouts.
If there is going to be this transformation of the jobs market, do you think that actually governments need to wake up and realise that this is happening and start going to schools, for example, and giving people the equipment that they need so they're not at risk of losing their job to a robot?
They certainly do. We need much more emphasis on science, on mathematics, on computer science, mechanical engineering and so forth. Much more early training, much more emphasis away from things that are fun and easy to teach maybe, but are rather more difficult to teach, things that are going to help people in the future. And the government needs to look at what the future market is and say we're going to need whatever it is, 100,000 doctors or 10,000 nurses, 50,000 software engineers or whatever, and aim to get the universities and the schools to fulfill those places.
And are you seeing any evidence of that happening?
Not a lot.
That's slightly worrying.
It is.
Thank you very much for your thoughts on this.
Pleasure.
Time now to take a look at the weather.